Hello, back again doing another video. Wanted to do a request video that someone asked me to do. Ash is for real, if I've said it right. He and I have been going back and forth a bit on my channel and on YouTube videos talking about fights. And we talked about Daniel Cormier and Jon Jones having a fight at some point. And it almost feels inevitable that we're going to see that. And to be honest with you, there's been so much talk of super fights, and I think next year in particular, the UFC needs to put on fights that fans want to see. And I think Daniel Cormier and Jon Jones is one of those fights. I think Jose Aldo and Frankie Edgar is another one of those fights. I think Anderson Silva and Georges St-Pierre is probably definitely going to happen now. It looks like Anderson Silva and Jon Jones is another one. Perhaps Cain Velasquez and Jon Jones is another one. I wouldn't mind seeing Benson Henderson and Georges St-Pierre fight. There's just so many fights that, are kind of dream super fights. So the one that I'm going to talk about is the one that my friend requested me to talk about, Daniel Cormier and Jon Jones. And to tell you the truth, I am interested in this fight. And I remember after Jon Jones fought Vitor Belfort not too long ago, and John Anik, the MMA Live UFC host guy, was on his Twitter, and in his usual, is there anyone in the world that can stop a Jon Jones takedown? And it kind of came off like he was a statement saying that there really isn't anyone in the world that can stop a Jon Jones takedown. And thankfully, Pat Miletich responded at Pat Miletich saying Daniel Cormier. And I think that helps hype the fight up. Now, there have been rumours that this fight almost happened, was almost signed to happen this year, and they were going to coach The Ultimate Fighter together. It's rumoured anyways. It's a lot of speculation on the internet, and I don't have a legitimate enough source to kind of confirm it. The one thing that I can say, if you went on Jon Jones' Twitter and Daniel Cormier's Twitter, Jon Jones made a remark about Daniel Cormier, a little tongue-in-cheek remark about Cormier not having enough Twitter followers to host TUF as a coach. And Cormier responded with, "This boy is just begging me to hit him." And then Cormier did an interview himself on that Spike TV show, and I can't remember the name of it now, it's gone from my head. But the one, they always put 2-minute clips up there, and they've got that very obnoxious host with the bald head who always interrupts everybody. I think Alistair Overeem nearly killed him at one point, he was getting so annoyed with him. But he did an interview on that show, and they asked him the inevitable Jon Jones question, and Cormier said, "Yeah, I'm down to do it. I'll do the fight. I will do the fight. It's gonna happen." Apparently, they even bumped into each other at the Anderson Silva Chael Sonnen fight, and Jon pretty much told them, "Look, I'm ready to do the fight." And I don't believe it was done in a trash talking way. I believe it was, "I'd love to fight you" kind of thing. A respectful thing for now. And so it looks like both sides want to do that fight. Now, the question is, number one, where, what weight would that happen at? And a lot of people are saying probably heavyweight, because Jon Jones has expressed desire in fighting at a heavyweight, fighting in heavyweight at some point. After he fights Chael Sonnen, and then maybe a few more fights down the road, he said he would love to fight as a heavyweight. He really wants to test himself in that weight class, and I think that would be interesting. I think Jon's speed would probably be compromised if he goes up to heavyweight. That's just my opinion. But him and Daniel Cormier fighting at heavyweight would be interesting. I think the advantage in that respect would go to Cormier, who's more in that kind of weight class. He's used to fighting in that weight class, used to going up against big, strong, heavyweight kind of guys. And I think Cormier has felt that kind of strength and power. But I think Jones is deceptively strong. He's stronger than how he actually physically looks. That's my thing. But I think Cormier would be ready for that. The other thing, though, is Cormier then said in the interview, however, he would fight at 205 pounds. Now, Cormier, I believe, is 5'11", so he's about the same height as me, and is 238 pounds. And in a way, is a similar, a lot of people compare him to Fedor, and he's kind of got a similar build to Fedor. He's not a muscular, shredded kind of guy. He's got, a bit of fat on him, and kind of chubby, but a great fighter, great wrestler. He has a tremendous wrestling background, and that wrestling background has probably been the sole reason to have gotten him as far as he has, because he's such an excellent wrestler and he works hard and he's got that hard work ethic and he's used to training hard, and he's clearly applied that to his striking and to his ground game and everything else, all the things you need to be a complete MMA fighter. And he said he would fight at 205, but he would need 6 months to get his body down there. And it's a shame that they didn't have them on The Ultimate Fighter in that respect, because they could have built that fight up within the 6 months. But anyways, Cormier and Jon Jones, the fight actually happening. If Cormier goes to 205, that will be interesting. Will his body get drained from all the weight loss that he makes? But then it's not a lot when you think about it. But he might, it might have an effect on him a little bit. Maybe losing some of the strength, but who knows. But, fucking hell, I'm all over the place today, sorry guys. Cormier and Jon Jones, the fight itself. I believe Jon Jones is 6'4". I'm saying this off the top of my head. He's got the longest reach in the UFC, so he has a height and reach advantage over Daniel Cormier. And I could see Jon Jones using his long arms to back up Daniel Cormier, kind of prevent Cormier from closing the distance, throwing those long shots through those long arms of his. See him throwing a lot of kicks, and I see him trying to keep Daniel on the outside before he tries to close the distance on him. Now, when it comes to wrestling, we know who's better. On paper, Cormier is the better wrestler. He's got all those accolades. He's had that great background, as we've previously mentioned. But it's MMA, and when you've got punches and kicks and knees and other tools to worry about and other movements to worry about, that kind of changes the whole game up. Now, if it becomes straight wrestling at some point in the fight, I would give Cormier the advantage. I think Cormier will take him down. I think Cormier can keep him down. But I think Cormier would need to be careful when he takes it to the ground, because, how can I put it? Jon has got those long arms and long legs, and they're an advantage and a disadvantage. Because if he gets taken down, he can... With those long arms and long legs, I've seen guys in grappling gyms with these long, wiry frames, and they can just snap on a submission on you and quickly just get out of whatever it is you have there. But if Jon Jones also has to be worried, because we've seen now that when he fought Vitor Belfort, that long arm got caught in a submission and he almost got his arm snapped. So I can imagine Cormier studying a lot of tape watching that. I see Cormier pressing forward a lot, wanting to close the distance on him. I've noticed that a lot of fighters, they kind of stay on the outside when they fight Jon Jones, whether they are meant to or not. I don't think it's always a good idea, because he's got those long arms and long legs. He can do whatever he wants when you stay outside. I can see Cormier moving forward a lot, trying to get inside his grill, working some shots and then going for some kind of takedown, putting him up by the cage. I could see him kind of implementing that kind of fight strategy. Looking at who both guys have kind of fought, it makes me kind of helps, where you think the fight's going to go. Cormier has fought some good fighters. I mean, he's kind of just stepping into that upper rung as of late. He fought Antonio Bigfoot Silva. Before that, he fought Jeff Monson. He beat up Jeff Monson. He scored the huge upset victory over Antonio Bigfoot Silva. And I'll tell you what, that fight made me so happy when he won. And I don't dislike Bigfoot Silva, but I really like Cormier. And Cormier, I'm a fan of Fedor, and he reminds me of Fedor, as I've said, in a lot of ways. And then when he fought him and he beat him in the way that he did, knocked him out, it was a big moment, for him and for his career. And if you were a fan watching it, man, it was quite the sight to see. And then to see him fight Josh Barnett, a guy that I think the world of skill-wise, a guy that's always been a top 10 heavyweight, a guy that's a perennial threat to any heavyweight that should be in the UFC, a guy that's been a King of Pancrase, a guy that's been a UFC champion, a guy that's had some legendary wars, beaten Nogueira and beaten other great fighters, and Cormier goes in there with him and just does whatever he wants with him for 5 rounds, 3 to 5 rounds, and my memory's really bad, but does what he wants with him, takes him up, in the end, slams him right back down, is landing punches, and is fighting with a broken bone in his hand. that to me really gives that man a lot of credibility, and I think that's why I believe Cormier could be a legitimate threat to Jon Jones. But then we've seen what Jon Jones has done. Jon Jones is an incredible fighter. Look, I rag on him. I'm not too... I have an up and down like for the guy. Sometimes he says things and it's like, oh, for God's sakes, Jon. But then other times he says things and he seems alright. But when you look at who he's fought and look at how he's beaten the guys, you know, he's really created this aura. He went out and destroyed Mauricio Shogun Rua. And I mean, I've not seen someone give that kind of beating to Shogun. I have not seen anyone lay it on Shogun in the way that he did. And that really surprised me. Look at how he beat Quinton Jackson. Completely outclassed him. Made Jackson look like he was not past it, but he made Jackson look really bad in that fight. Jackson just looked slow and plodding. He had great head movement and was able to defend some of those takedowns. But everywhere else, Jon just had his number. Look at what he did with Lyoto Machida. Now, that was an interesting fight. Granted, Lyoto, you can argue, won the first round. He got inside a little bit and started landing things, and I think that's the best way to fight Jon Jones, and I think that's the way Cormier would probably fight Jon Jones. But then the second round kicks in, and it's all Jon Jones, baby. And he gets him in the guillotine, keeps him in there, and then just lets him drop flat on the ground. And look what he did there. And now I'm thinking, who's next? Rashad Evans. He fought Rashad Evans. Granted, after all the hype and all the grudge and everything else, it wasn't the most exciting fight in the world, but Jon did a great job. Rashad really couldn't do anything to him. And then obviously Vitor Belfort, and we saw what happened there. After he was put in a bit of adversity with the submission, he came back from that and won and put on a great fight, in my opinion. And obviously he's not fought Dan Henderson, but I think that would have been a very interesting fight. I think Jon would have beaten him. And you look at what he's done with all these guys and the flashy moves that he has. He's really created this aura, and I think the key for Cormier is to not buy into the aura. And I mean, you know, when a guy fights someone and they're kind of nervous about fighting them, and oh, what's he going to do here and what's he going to do there? Oh, he's done this to this person and done this to that person. You've seen it in fights. You've seen it a lot of times in fights when guys come in there with that mindset and they lose. I've seen that when people fight Anderson Silva. And do you know what? Now, just having said that, I wouldn't mind seeing Daniel Cormier and Anderson Silva. But that's another story. I think that if Cormier doesn't get caught up in the aura and he just comes in there and does what he needs to do, I could see Cormier winning that fight. Now, the build-up to that fight would be interesting. It's a shame they didn't get the Ultimate Fighter. I don't know if that would have saved the Ultimate Fighter. I think 2 female coaches in an all-female season would revamp that show. But if they do a build-up, a UFC primetime would be excellent. I mean, it would be a good way to kind of introduce Cormier to the rest of the UFC audience. They've got the Fox deal. Potentially, if they can get the right time, they can really put his name out there. And I think he could come across as very likable. If you haven't seen the AKA documentary, you'll see what I mean. Cormier is an absolute class act. Comes off as very genuine, very humble, very funny, a very good person and a very likable person. And I felt that that shone right through in the documentary. And I think in the lead into the fight, I think that Cormier, if you're going to talk about the popularity contest, is going to win that, obviously, because a lot of people don't like Jon. A lot of people find Jon insincere. A lot of people call him fake. A lot of people don't necessarily buy into everything he says. Whereas you see Cormier, and Cormier just strikes everybody as a humble, sincere, funny, sweet guy. And if you've heard his story and you've read his story on interviews, you kind of see why, you know, he's such a likable person. Anyways, I'm going to stop there. So I've pretty much said I think that Cormier could beat him. I've already said in another video that I think Cormier could be a potential UFC champion. And in fact, you know what, I'm going to go out on a limb, take out the word potential. Daniel Cormier will be a UFC champion. I'm going to stop. Ash for real, I hope you enjoyed that. Please write some comments. Let me know what you all think. I'm sorry if it's a bit disjointed. I'm, you know, feeling a bit sore after training and everything. So you write some comments. You let me know what you think. Share the video. There's a lovely button called subscribe. Please hit that. And I will hopefully get back to you all very soon. Take care.